The story of an abandoned hospital. The abandoned hospital on the outskirts of town was once a bustling center for medical care, but years of neglect had turned the building into a decrepit and eerie shell of its former self. The locals had many stories about the hospital, including rumors of strange experiments and unspeakable horrors that had taken place there. But despite the warnings, a group of urban explorers decided to investigate the abandoned hospital for themselves. The group consisted of 5 people: Adam, a thrill seeker who loved exploring abandoned buildings; his girlfriend, Sarah, who was always up for an adventure; Mark, a photographer who wanted to capture the hospital's decay; Jake, a skeptic who didn't believe in ghosts or paranormal activity; and Rachel, a history buff who was interested in learning more about the hospital's past. As they approached the hospital, the group felt a sense of unease. The building loomed before them like a giant, ominous presence. The windows were shattered, and the front door hung off its hinges. Inside, the hospital was dark and musty. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the floors creaked ominously underfoot. The group started to explore the hospital, each one taking a different corridor. Adam and Sarah headed up to the second floor, while Mark wandered off to take some photos. Jake and Rachel decided to explore the basement. As they made their way through the hospital, the group began to notice strange things. Doors would slam shut by themselves, and cold drafts of air would sweep through the corridors. But Jake dismissed these occurrences as natural phenomena, and Rachel remained focused on uncovering the hospital's history. But then they found the records room. The records room was filled with old files and documents dating back decades. Rachel was immediately drawn to the room, eager to sift through the records and learn more about the hospital's past. But as she dug deeper, she began to realize that something was off. The records were incomplete, with large gaps in the information, and some of the files seemed to be deliberately misleading or even falsified. Rachel was shocked to discover that the hospital had a dark and sinister past, one that had been covered up by the staff and the local authorities. As she was about to share her findings with the group, Rachel suddenly heard a noise coming from the hallway outside. It sounded like footsteps, heavy and deliberate. She called out to Jake, but there was no response. Suddenly, she heard a scream. Rachel bolted out of the records room and raced down the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. As she turned a corner, she saw Jake lying on the floor, his face twisted in terror. She rushed to his side, but it was too late. Jake was dead, his body twisted and broken. The rest of the group was in shock when they heard what had happened. They quickly gathered their things and fled the hospital, vowing never to return again. But as they left, they couldn't help but feel like they were being watched, like something was following them out of the abandoned hospital. In the days that followed, the group tried to make sense of what had happened. They combed through the hospital records and talked to locals who remembered the hospital's past. And slowly, they began to uncover the truth. The hospital had been home to a notorious doctor who had conducted horrific experiments on his patients. He had used the hospital as his own private laboratory, performing gruesome surgeries and torturing his victims in the name of science. When the authorities finally caught wind of his activities, they shut down the hospital and arrested the doctor, but the damage had already been done. Years later, the hospital remained abandoned, haunted by the ghosts of the doctor's victims. And the group of urban explorers who had ventured into the hospital had unwittingly stumbled into the realm of these vengeful spirits. The ghostly presence they had felt following them out of the hospital was the tortured souls seeking retribution for the atrocities that had been committed within its walls. In the months that followed, the members of the group experienced strange occurrences in their daily lives. They would hear footsteps in their homes, doors would slam shut on their own, and they would wake up in the middle of the night to find their belongings moved or misplaced. They all knew deep down that the spirits of the hospital were responsible, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Finally, Sarah couldn't take it anymore. The constant fear and unease had taken its toll on her, and she decided to seek help from a local paranormal investigator. The investigator conducted an extensive investigation of the hospital and the group's experiences, and his findings were chilling. He discovered that the spirits of the hospital had attached themselves to the group, and they were not going to let go without a fight. He recommended a ritual to banish the spirits, and the group agreed to participate. The ritual was intense and frightening. The group gathered in a darkened room and recited incantations while the investigator performed various symbolic actions. At one point, the spirits became so strong that the windows in the room shattered, sending glass flying everywhere. But the group persisted, and eventually, the spirits were banished. After that night, The group never experienced any more paranormal activity. They went on with their lives, but they could never forget the horror they had experienced in the abandoned hospital, and they knew that they had been lucky to escape with their lives. The hospital still stands, abandoned and decaying, a testament to the horrors that occurred within its walls.